Welcome back to Beyond the Blocks. Today's guest is Coach James Daniels, founder of Daniels High Performance and the head of sprints, hurdles, and for the NSAF Nike Elite program. Coach Daniels has built a strong reputation for developing high-level sprints and hurdles talent and helping guide athletes to elite performance. Today, we'll talk about his journey into coaching, his philosophy on athlete development, and what it takes to build world-class sprinters and hurdlers. Coach Daniels, we'd like to thank you. Thank you for welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Yes, sir. No, thank you guys very much for having me. And it is my hope and my heart's desire to be completely transparent about how this journey started and answer every question forthrightly. And as I always would say, I don't duck any smoke, so I'm going to answer everything honestly.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, I'll start first. Like I said, once again, just thank you for, being on the show. I know, like I said, Nike's, right behind us and about to start. But definitely want to get into, just how you got into coaching, how'd you get started, your philosophy over time. Just want to, dig into that.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to date myself probably with a lot of this stuff. Actually, tomorrow's my birthday too, so I'm going to actually. Yeah, thank you, my brothers. I'm actually going to date myself, but I grew up really wanting to serve the community in a way to provide opportunities for, in particular, athletes that look like us. And I wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to get, at that point, education was the main thing, and so. I was able to have a successful high school and collegiate career, and then I decided to go into coaching. And my main thing of going into coaching, I was watching something really on Ed Temple of the Tennessee Tiger Bells. And they had the four Tennessee Tiger Bells as the 4x1 in 1968 Olympics. And so Ed Temple has been an inspiration to me to kind of start what I was doing, because I wanted to provide those same opportunities for our community to be first generational students in college. And then I had the pleasure of meeting Coach Curtis Fry, who at that time was at Chapel Hill, then he ended up being at the University of South Carolina for a long time. We became good friends, and he became a good mentor. And then I was at the Division III level, starting at Christopher Newport, in Newport News, Virginia, and Coach Vince Brown gave me an opportunity to come from the high school side to be a sprint hurdle coach, and we were able to win 4 national titles and 6 runner-up opportunities, and I created a lot of national champions that way. I worked with some hurlers that were one hurler in particular, Victor Cochran, who was the first person under 14 seconds in the hurdles, and things like that. So I did some pioneering things that I thought that kind of spring me forward. And then I can never say enough about Coach Roy Thompson at North Carolina A&T State University. He brought me on board as an assistant. We were at level 1 school together, and he asked me about working at a HBCU. I'm also a Hampton graduate. And so Coach Thompson asked me about joining him at North Carolina A&T back in 2001. And I was there with him through 2012. And then while we were there, we had tremendous success. We created a lot of All-Americans. When I arrived at North Carolina A&T State University, there was no track. We had asphalt, and Coach Thompson's vision, along with his collaboration with the city, afforded us to build him to have access to resources with Belk, and they built a world-class track facility. It was one of the first HBCUs to host NCAA regionals, JOs, and things like that. Morgan State had a Mondo as well, and they had opportunities to do the same thing. So that's kind of like how I got started, just giving back. I want to be of service to my community, to both young men and young women, and that's kind of like what started me into coaching. Along with that, as you guys know, I have been, successful at Division I, II, and III as a coach, and now at the private coach level, still being able to do some things. And so I'm very fortunate, and I've had some very good mentors. I think I would be remiss not to tell you that these particular stories, for a long time, starting in like 1991 through about 2002, I spoke pretty much yearly with Dean Hayes, who was at Middle Tennessee State, who was an incredible triple jump coach. Dick Booth was an incredible jump coach at the University of Arkansas. Curtis Fry, well, I was talking to Coach Curtis Fry all the time, all through the summer. I had the pleasure of talking to Wilbur Ross, who wrote the Critical Zone article back in the late '90s, and who wrote the Hurdle Bible, and then I had the pleasure of talking with Bobby Kersey. I had influence from John Smith, So I've talked to a lot of people who I stand on their shoulders, and so I would be, like I said, remiss not to say that up front, that I spent time on my craft and trying to figure out how to develop it. And for a number of years, I spoke to these great coaches at length, developed relationships with them, and they really inspired me and gave me an opportunity to become who I am. So I can't say I did it all by myself at all. It's through those people that I was able to give back to the sport at such a high level.
No, that's dope. You like a sponge. You had so many different influences. You was just sponging up. Like, hey, let me.
Yes, yeah, and then I'm gonna date myself. That's when you can actually push 411 and call any state, and then call somebody and look somebody up. So I'm letting you know that's what I did. Coach Dick Booth in particular. I started off as a jump coach, and Coach Dick Booth at the time had an incredible arsenal of jumpers at the University of Arkansas. So he was so freely able to give me stuff. And then, like I said, Dean Hayes, the father of triple jump that was at Middle Tennessee State with some of his drills. And I learned a lot from him. And I can't say enough about Coach Fry and Coach Roy Thompson. Everybody called him Spaceman. Can't say enough about them. They burnt a lot of things into my heart, into my brain cell. And, I'm very thankful for both of those gentlemen in particular, along with Coach Vince Brown, who gave me an opportunity at Chris Newport Chris Newport already had won like 6 national championships in Division III. Mm-hmm. So at that time, back then, if you do a little research, Chris Newport and LSU were the only ones that had 12 national titles at one point. Wow. And so Coach Vince Brown gave me an opportunity to step in and allow me to develop my craft. So once again, like I said, I cannot thank them enough. But one of the things that really inspired me a lot after I started coaching was Ed Temple.
This is not one of the questions that we had, but you mentioned all of these other coaches and the knowledge of wealth that you've accumulated over years and over time. A lot of times you don't see many coaches sharing knowledge and their experiences amongst athletes and things they did right or did wrong with one another. What do you think contributes to that nowadays compared to when you began coaching?
There you go. I would agree with that. I think now the difference is that coaches are not as open as those gentlemen were. I mean, those gentlemen really wanted to promote the sport to the next level. And so they didn't really care about if they told you the inside secrets of how they did what they did. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the main people who really got me studying the sciences when I asked them questions a lot back then was John Smith. A lot of people say, "Oh, he's this, he's that," but John Smith was probably one of the scientists of the sport, and he was like, "Look, you want to learn this, James? You got to study the energy systems." So my first book that I ever bought was by Tom Eckert, which was Biomechanics into Something. That was my first biomechanical book. Then I bought a book on kinesiology. Then I bought a book on biochemistry. And then that's how I personally started learning. But each one of those coaches told me to buy books and read and study my craft. And so I studied Tudor Bopa, and I studied Don Chu, jumping to plyometrics. And then I began to put a structural program together based off of those particular conversations with those particular coaches. And then the coaches that would influence me, I was following their instructions. And the same thing like with Coach Thompson at A&T, we would sit down and get on a whiteboard and write up individualized training plans for like 50% of our group. So it wasn't a cookie cutter approach to anything. But one of the things I did learn in that process, to be very transparent about you, is that the science of track and field is about energy systems. So you can create a system that train entity systems to get kids where they're supposed to be, and it's not about the workout. And I think a lot of times these coaches are about workouts, not about the entity system or development.
I love that. I love that.
I love that. Yep. I love that. Coaches, get out there and read. You gotta read. You gotta read.
Yes. Stay off of Instagram and and all these other things, because honestly, every person, like somebody asked me, well, how do you develop your system? I think it's one of your kind of what you kind of referred to, and each person has a different location of access to resources. Mm-hmm. So here in Greensboro, North Carolina, our school system allows me here as part of Dane's High Performance. I can train the kids at 6:30 in the morning. Here we do our weight training and drills in the morning at 6:30 to about 8 o'clock. They go to school at 9:20. So Dane's High Performance is built on a collegiate system or a collegiate program or college prep programming. So I try to go in the weight room in the mornings with my kids here in North Carolina, and then we come back in the afternoon and go at 5:30. And in between that, they're in school. So from a college and collegiate prep perspective, the athletes here that I'm blessed to work with, and along with the parents, they kind of adhere to the system that I have here about development. And I believe in long-term development models. And I've studied the Russians, the Chinese, the East Germans, the Canadians, and stuff like that. So I'm a long-term development model person. So we do what I call age-appropriate training. I'm not a big fan of all the gadgets. We don't, somebody sent me a message today, which I'm sure you'll ask me about later on, and some other questions about the 1080. And I'm not a big fan of a 1080 for high school students. I believe in, starting off with in-place jumps, into bounding and into hurdle hops, into sled pulls, and then maybe possibly into the 1080. But that's a 12-week to 16-week process if you do it the right way.
I love that.
I love it.
So I got a question for you, Coach. So you talked about your mentors, right? So when you look back at your early years in coaching and all the mentors you had, what's some of the biggest lessons you learned from them that you still use today? Just like one or two of the ones that you use the most to this day.
Great question. And what I've learned from them is like every athlete has similarities. Mm-hmm. So you have to discern what's what. So when we train here locally, or when I talk to coaches abroad, I ask them to put their groups into 3 groups: A group, a B group, and a C group. And the A group have a lot of similarities of training, so you can use one set of program, and then B group has another set of similarities, and then so does C. And so when you do that, then it allows you to kind of be very consistent. And I believe in the principles of science. So I believe in progressive overloading. So whatever we do, if I start with 10 meters the first week, I go to 20 the second week, 30 the third week, and then 40 the fourth week. And so I use the right program to last 4 to 6 weeks. So that's kind of like my thing is progressive overloading, and then being able to put the kids in groups to identify their skill set.
Let's go. I love that.
Yep. Not doing one thing for everyone. I like that.
Yeah. So at some point you have to spin off. Like you can put everybody in one thing initially, but that one thing initially allows you to separate later about, specialization. I think one of the things that to be quite transparent about this is that I think specialization right now in the high school level is shouldn't be done. I think that a lot of kids should be running the 4x4s and the 800s and this and that, but we're specializing them early, and so when they get to college, it's giving the college coaches a really difficult time in some cases, because when you get to college is generally normally for you to be able to start specializing, because if you look at the long-term development models, the collegiate years of 17 to 19 are in 17 to 19 age group is based in the college system. So as a high school coach, I try to generalize a lot of things. I don't specialize the athletes into nothing. I'm definitely a short to long type of person initially in the fall, but once you get into competition, generally speaking, people who run the 400, you become long to short, because the harder workouts got to be done early in the week, and then you use the speed development on Wednesday or Thursday, and then you kind of rest, and then you go run on the weekend. And so your 400 people, you kind of go long to short, and then the sprint people, you kind of go short to long. But generally speaking, you generally have to split them up eventually. But in the fall, everybody is short to long in the fall for me.
So, coaches,
I'm sorry. While we get into talking about like the fall training, I noticed that what you implement in your fall training is like prehab. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's what I try to do early in the fall. I started with a prehab program, 4 to 6 weeks, and that program is designed to promote physical and movement literacy. So I try to get kids to do push-ups, lunges, backward age skills, backwards, lunges. There's things that you don't normally do later on in the year. So I try to promote a lot of physical and movement literacy early on in the prehab section. And I usually try to get the female in particular because females are usually 32 to 40, sometimes 40% weaker than their male counterparts in the shoulder area. So I try to really introduce push-ups for the females during that 4 to 6 week period, because if you do a wheelbarrow push-up, Jeremy, kind of visualize a wheelbarrow push-up in your brain right now. And then if you think about it, that's the same position of a start. So a lot of girls can't hold their body weight up in the start because they can't hold they're not strong enough. Yeah. So I do a lot of wheelbarrow push-ups early in the year to put them in the position of being in the start position a little bit later on down the line. So I do a lot of calisthenics. I believe strongly in that. In studying the Russians and the East Germans in particular, they had a lot of calisthenics in their general preparation phase. And so I kind of like, as you know, you borrow stuff from each other as coaches. So I kind of borrow that, over 30 years ago, and I've kind of maintained it. And I kind of use that as a mechanism of development in particular for my female athletes. And I can honestly say over the 35 years of coaching, I've rarely had, any real injuries. I think I maybe only had maybe 5 hamstring injuries in 30 plus years of coaching. And so, so I think it's about the system that you put them in initially. Yeah. And I think the work capacity in the tendons and the ligament areas are extremely important. I read a really good article on premature adaptation of tendons. And so the human body is like a cell. And so sometimes we as coaches can very transparently, I would say, get overly excited about how we coach and then take credit for stuff. So, and what I mean by that is this. The human body biologically is going to adapt to anything that you put it under. Any type of stress you put it under is going to adapt. Either it's going to be a good adaptation or a bad adaptation. Mm-hmm. So the key now is, are your athletes successful because of or in spite of? Mm-hmm. So as a coach, you have to discern that and see if your training that you're doing with the athletes, that they're successful because of. Because the human body is going to adapt. There are a lot of ways, like people say, the skin of a cat. I get that. But there's only one way to be successful.
I love everything you're saying in regards to all of that, Coach, because especially when you talk about athletic development, the prehab, and just taking it back and sometimes like slowing it down a little bit, because, a lot of time what you see on Instagram and, on social media is like the plug and play athlete. You could just put them in. You can have them adapt to that system, but, whether or not they've got it or not, you're going to know they're going to put the times up regardless. But I like how you talk about the prehab and just taking care of the body, and you're implementing that prior to and taking care of them long term and developing the athlete long term. That goes into my next question. Like, how do you structure development differently for the younger athletes versus athletes you already have competing at a national level?
Yeah, great. No, and again, I appreciate your question. It's a great question. I generally like anybody that's 15 years and younger that I've happened to be working with. They do a 10 to 12 week general prep phase. Mm-hmm. Going back to what Coach Humphreys asked me just now, we do a 4-week prehab where I'm preparing the muscles through calisthenics, jumping jacks, inchworms, push-ups, wheelbarrow push-ups, lunges, backward lunges, squat walks, all that stuff like that. All that, because I believe in what you call developing the prime movers of speed. So those exercises that I implement in that section, those prepare them for my general prep section. And from day one, we start off with acceleration work. Day one, we started after Labor Day. Day one, we moving. We start off with push-up starts, rolling starts, all kind of stuff like that. So when you're 15 and under, I give you 10 weeks. When you're 16 and above, you usually get 8 to 10. So because at that point, it's all about work capacity, coach. It really is. If an athlete doesn't have work capacity built in the fall, the speed endurance they need in the later on in the year, and then into the later in the year, when you get to the state meet, then you'll start having some hiccups with kids being able to repeat performances. They're getting hurt. They're just not doing as well as they should. And normally speaking, you can look back. The best way I can say it is like practice is a laboratory of learning, but track meets are an opportunity to see execution. So if you know what you want execution wise and it's not there, then you have to go back to what you did in the preseason, because that's going to drive the work capacity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, work capacity is extremely important. It just really is. And especially in the tendon and the ligament joints. A lot of coaches now are doing what I call studio stuff. And so they'll watch so much other stuff that they're not really paying attention to the actual science of the sport. And what I mean by that is that they're using 4-week and 5-week general prep phases, no prehab phases, on what Coach Humphreys asked me. They skip that completely. They go straight into 4-week, 5-week general prep phases, and they go straight into Pacific, straight into specialization. And then you're going to get a result. Think about this for a second, guys. You can look all over the country. You'll see a lot of kids open up really well in November, December, and January, but afterthought in February, March, and April. And why is that? Well, they ran fast early, then they try to repeat those things without proper work capacity, and then somehow they're injured, then they're out for the rest of the year, and then you don't hear about them again. And there are a lot of those athletes out there. I'm not saying nothing against any particular situation or coach. I'm just being very transparent about how, athletes are not being utilized in what I call a long-term development model that I believe in. And a long-term development model requires you to do 8 to 12 weeks of general prep. And there are no shortcuts to that. I think you guys, as a profession, you guys are in your profession because you was not allowed to take a shortcut. If you could take a shortcut, you have more money in your pocket. So it's the same thing with sports. You cannot take a shortcut towards success.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Respect. You got one, Anthony?
Oh shoot, my internet went out, so I don't know I'm like, where we at?
Hey man, pay your bill, baby. Pay your bill. You need a couple dollars, baby. The OG got you.
Yeah, we'll edit. We'll edit around that end. So we on for you, question 5.
5. Okay. All right. So my question is, well, when evaluating, now I'm all jacked up the way I got everything set up. So when evaluating sprinters or hurdlers for the first time, what are you looking for, or what allows you to determine if that person has potential?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think one of the most important things is when us as coaches, I'm not going to say but just not just me, us as coaches can find an athlete that's willing to run the 4x4, the open 400. That right there, when you can find an athlete that can do that embraces that, you got something. Because an athlete that says only run the 4 or only run the 100 or 200, the athlete's telling you they only specialize. And so when you're young, specialization is a prohibitor of development. So if that athlete does not want to run the 4x4, then they are prohibiting their ability to be successful. So at that point, as a coach, you got to make a decision whether you want to deal with that or not. Everybody that's in Daniels High Performance or in our Nike program, basically, all the athletes run the 4x4. Any athlete that I train privately, that's part of your process. If you're not willing to run the 4x4 or run some overwork, then Daniels High Performance is not for you.
I love that.
Love that. Like that model.
Gotta be a team player too.
Yeah. It's like I said. The most important thing to me is maximizing the opportunity for the athletes. At the end of the day, you're right when you asked me a question earlier about my philosophy. I am extremely devoted to our community and giving opportunity. I think it's very important for our athletes to have access to college. And being first generational, I was first generational college. I am still the only person in my family that has a master's degree and above. I could have finished my doctorate, but coaching called my name a little bit differently, so I didn't finish my doctorate. But I actually have I have a master's degree in educational leadership, and then I have an almost completed doctorate. I'm 14. I was 14 months away from a doctorate in higher education and learning styles. So I use my training practices as educational tools. I don't sugarcoat my teaching methodology. Whatever you don't know, you got to look up.
I love that.
That's how I look at it.
That makes sense, though, of like hearing how you got into coaching, and then from education is what I can hear and tell is that you truly love to learn, and not only to learn, but also to divvy out that information that you are digesting and learning to other coaches and people as well. So
that's absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Anthony, you and I have had some very good conversations when Keelan was in the program, and I don't have no problem because I was given too freely. I know John Smith. Yeah, I know who John Smith is. You know who Dick Booth is. You know who Wilbur Ross was in his time. You know, Bobby Kersey. You know, Curtis Fry. Them gentlemen didn't charge me a dime.
Yeah.
They gave to me freely, and I have to pay it forward. So I don't. So when people call me and ask me questions, I don't. People are like, man, why don't you charge? I wasn't charged. I just really wasn't. They picked up the telephone for me at 9:00 at night. So like when you call from California and it's like after 11 or something like that, and I pick up the phone. When he called, cool, I forgot, man, you was on the East Coast. Oh, man, that's okay. What's going on, babe? What you need?
It'd be up, ready to answer. I'm like, oh, hold on, it's late there.
yeah. It's just because other people poured into me. And I may not have always been a perfect coach for everybody, but my heart's been perfect towards teaching.
Yeah.
So I just trying to look at it like that. Now I have had a lot of kids be successful, but then there's been some that hasn't appreciated my approach. But that's part of life as well. So I had to learn that I wasn't going to please everybody. And that was a tough lesson. Simply because if you have a heart for people and you want to see them be successful, then it bruises your heart when you're not liked or cared about, or somebody says something derogatory about you. Right. And I hope that people in the audience can identify with that. When you're giving your heart and you're just trying to help people, your heart's not built towards taking the criticism or the backlash or even from your own colleagues. I had something this year happened where somebody was like, oh, you send everybody to different schools and all that stuff. Like, I don't send nobody to no schools. I just come up with questions. I told the kids in our program to find a program that fits your resume requirements. And if that's sending kids to schools, then I'm guilty. Because I think at the end of the day, your resume and who you are and what you want, you have to interview those schools to make sure you get those things met. And if you don't do that, then they're back, and they're back unfulfilled adults. They're broken.
That's crazy to me too, because at a minimum, at least you're getting the kids to college.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like and not on their parents' dime. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and I can attest of kind of being a part of that, even with Keelan's process, is like you had written down, hey, what's the schools that you're interested in? Let's listen down 1 to 5. And, what are the questions that you're going to ask, reviewing those questions and making sure the questions now these are your times. Let's look at, your times compared to those times. So it's not directing the school, but it's evaluating, okay, let's make sure these schools fit where you are and where you're trying to go. So,
yeah, you're right. Like I said, if anybody can say anything, now you understand that process. We went through it very meticulously with Keelan, and it wasn't like no direction. It was like, okay, if you're looking for this, these are you need to look. You need to ask these questions. You need to align this school with this, and if you had this type of coaching and this energy system development, you need to look at this. So when you do that, just like a job application, it rules you out.
Yep.
It just rules you out. It has nothing to do with somebody saying anything. It's just everything about that's not a good fit for me. And I think it's important to make sure that our kids go to the initial place the first time correctly, because as you already know, when kids got to go onto the portal and do different things, they don't get the same offer that they received the first time. Now, some of them do, but generally speaking, it takes a little bit out of their personhood, because they begin to look at themselves as like, I wasn't good enough or I failed. And so now you got to deal with those variables about getting them back on track. So I think it's important for athletes to meticulously evaluate where they want to go.
Absolutely. I can attest to that personally, you know. So here's the question for you. So not in order to, but as far as like giving our audience some good information and helping parents, helping coaches as well, what's some of the big mistakes you see parents, coaches, athletes make with regard to helping their athlete develop speed?
Great question. I would say that the name of the school. Mm-hmm. All because the school got a certain name doesn't mean it's the right place for you. Mm-hmm. I think that's where you have to dig deep and connect with the coach. You know, for instance, anybody that works with me, you know, not saying that this stuff is bad. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a cusser. I'm just a person that's very direct, this and that. So if you go to a program that does the opposite of what you've been coached under, that's probably the first rule of thumb of failure. Mm-hmm. Because it hits your spirit different.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then particularly, and then if you especially be coach, I say if you coach females and they're not used to being yelled at, cussed at, yada yada, then you go someplace where that's at. You know, same thing like with guys, if they go someplace where they're not used to certain things in terms of vernacular and how they've been spoken to, it tears down their character, and then they begin to lean on each other a little bit differently. And sometimes when they lean on each other a little bit differently, it's not always the right way for them to lean on each other. Because at that point, they begin to pat each other up, this, that, yeah, coach tripping, yada, yada, yada. And then it creates a breach in the coach-athlete relationship. And so then they begin to lose, the coaches begin to lose the athletes that they brought into the school. And then for my colleagues that are outstanding coaches, a lot of this stuff isn't their fault. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of athletes will choose a big time school and they'll tell the coach, "Oh, I want to be a NCAA champion. I want to be an East Regional champion." But then they get down there and they got to work after of a mule. They don't want to work hard anymore. They got sucked into other things. And so my colleagues on the collegiate side are taking hits from people saying, "Oh, they did a bad job coaching that kid." No, that kid went there and quit on them. Mm-hmm. And then they end up being in the portal because they end up quitting on those coaches. And then the coaches can't tell you, like, this person missed 8 practices or this person picked up X amount of weight, because that does happen, or this person did this person did it. They can't do that. So my colleagues on the collegiate side, they take these really bad hits on why they failed with a certain type of athlete, and they can't tell you the athlete wasn't going to class, wasn't completing the workout, staying out late, doing this, doing that. They can't speak on that. Right. So I want to make sure that my colleagues understand that they are not the reason why a number of these kids are in the portal. A lot of these kids have really gone there and just gave up on their vision. And that's why it's important for coaches or parents to teach their children to just be themselves. Don't rely on outside influences. Don't take the values of another person onto your skill set, because when you get to college, as you guys already know, a college team is an all-star team, gentlemen. Yeah. You got people come from all over the country. Everybody on the same type of money, you know what I'm saying? And it's an all-star team. And so when you're not used to losing reps, you're going to lose something you get the freshman year in college. Yeah. So how do you handle being second, third, or fourth best on a rep when you're used to just winning the rep? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Right. So those are the things that my colleagues are dealing with on the collegiate side. They're not used to, the athletes that they bring in aren't used to losing a rep, aren't used to being the weakest person in the group, aren't used to being the leader of the group. And so then those coaches are placed in a position of trying to grow up an athlete that isn't used to being the last person on a rep. Right. How you know what I'm saying? Like, psychologically, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying, and the audience understand this. When you run a rep and you're the first one for 4 years, You get to a certain university and you're butt naked last on a rep. That does something to your psyche.
Right.
Right. So those are things that I like to say that from my end, I try to prepare the kids in James High Performance and what we do with the Nike Elite program with Dr. Otley, Michelle Freeman, and Mac and all of us. We try to get them to understand that college teams are all-star teams.
Yeah.
And when you go to an all-star team, everybody ain't going to make it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it. I never looked at it like that, but that's a good way to put it.
So Coach, you briefly told us about your philosophy and coaching. Can you just tell us more about Daniel's High Performance? Explain to us, exactly what it is and what your mission is with the program.
Yeah, sure. Daniel High Performance came about during COVID.
Okay.
I was going through transition in my career. I was down on myself, and I was just trying to figure out what to do, honestly. And during COVID, I was able to figure it out. I always want to give credit to Ralph Jones of Jones Elite Training in Charlotte. He called up and he was like, "Man, what you doing?" "Man, I don't know. You know how we go." Yeah. And I'm just keeping it a buck. I wasn't in the best of spirits because I just felt some things went wrong for me, and I never got certain things the way I wanted them to. And so, Ralph called me and picked my spirits up and brought me, and I started going to Charlotte a lot. And then we, ended up having 50 kids in the Charlotte area, and then we collaborated with each other. And then I was able to utilize the knowledge that I have to start really giving back. And, my really Daniel's High Performance was initially called The Body Shop. And the reason why I called it The Body Shop, because it was mind, spirit, and soul. And I felt like, training was about that. So my initial name of my business was The Body Shop. I changed it in 2022 to Daniel's High Performance because I was talking to some of my former athletes, in particular like Eric Winfrey. They was like, "Coach, we'll just call it Daniel's High Performance." And I was like, "Oh, you know what?" He was like, your name speaks for itself, so why not do it this way?" So that's how I became the Daniel's High Performance. Like I said, Daniel's High Performance is a college prep program. It's not simply a coaching thing. I'm about your academics. If you ain't doing well in school, you get sent back home.
There you go.
You can't come to practice. I check on all the athletes. I think an athlete that I work with will tell you. I ask about grades and all that good stuff. I talk to them about their majors, what they're doing. I try to facilitate opportunities for them to visit the right school. And so that's what Daniel's High Performance is about, just giving back to my community here in Greensboro at a large level. But it's grown to a situation where I have a lot of remote training opportunities to work with a lot of people, and I'm very blessed to do that. And it's given me longevity in the sport, and more importantly, it's picked up my soul. It's fed me the right things to feel like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm called to do. And I wake up every day excited about it. I wake every day excited about being with Nike program. I'm very thankful to Josh Rowe and Joey Kamani, who called me when they were developing this process and brought me into the game, because Josh Rowe and I worked together when he was with Nike back in 2006, 2005 when I was at A&T. And so he thought enough of me, and Joey Kamani thought enough of me to say, hey, would you mind doing this? Because when I first met the NSAF side, I knew Joy Kamani. She went to Texas Southern, another HBCU person, and they were actually at North Carolina State. And I took the schematics of North Carolina A&T to the NSAF meet in North Carolina State. That's when Ted Ginn was killing it out of Ohio, and they had they had an incredible Glen when it was with Glenville.
Right.
Glenville was incredible. And they had like 2 sets of 4x1s that ran 40 point and all stuff like that. But that particular year, it was a last year at NC State. And I knew that we were building a track at A&T. I happened to knew somebody who knew Joy Kamani. I took those schematics to Joy Kamani, and she saw that track. And as a fellow HBCUer, she was like, "Oh yeah, we're coming." And so we got Jim Spear involved, who's the founder of NSAF. And, the rest is history. And then we spent, a long period of time of bringing that meet there. And then we also spent an opportunity of holding the East Regionals, being the first HBCU to do that. And so I've been a part of some pioneering efforts. And I don't take those things lightly. And they've been very beneficial to me. And I think I think Anthony knows me more than he was you guys, but I'm extremely honest. And then I think sometimes my honesty has not gotten me rewarded the way I would like to. But at the end of the day, anybody that knows me, you're either going to like me for my honesty or you're not going to like me. And so I had to learn how to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about, your program. So how does like a parent that's in Greensboro or maybe even an athlete that may be in California who wants to, you to train remote, like what does that process look like for that?
That's a great question, because you know why? I ain't figured that one out. Because I kind of grew up in an era of let your excellence and silence speak for itself. So I don't advertise. I have a very difficult time of posting. I have a very difficult time of putting anything online still to this day. So it's just word of mouth, that I've been blessed enough. And then and that also started again with Ralph Jones at Jones Elite Training. He's the one that's like, hey, you need to go down and see Coach James with this and do and that. And then that's created my clientele. And then it just exploded from there. I have a number of athletes. I actually was talking to, thinking about it the other day. I got my first set of athletes. I got about 12 athletes this year graduating from college. And that's that cohort from 2022 that's moving out of college and stuff like that. And so I'm excited about that because I feel like I still held true to my mission as a collegiate coach. Because when you're a collegiate coach, you have an opportunity to influence and do a lot of things. But when you get out of collegiate coaching, then you really have to find your own niche. You have to find a way to feed yourself. You have to find a way to benefit your community. You have to find a way to work and collaborate with people. Being a private coach, a lot of high school coaches don't want to work with you because they don't care how much you've accomplished. They see you as a threat. Yeah. And, you have to learn how to deal with that. And then you got to convince parents that if you want your child to be at this level, this is the type of coaching they need. And if you don't do it that way, then it is what it is. So, I've had to, learn how to navigate those waters in such a way where I can still benefit my community, still collaborate with all the coaches in my area, and still be someone that somebody values as a resource. Now, again, everybody's not going to value you, as you guys already know. And so you have to be willing to understand that when you're not being valued, you can't take it personal.
Mm-hmm. Right. I got two things I got two things. My first thing is shout out to Coach Jones. I seen you posted him one time and I started following him. He'd be out there with the T-Apexes and all the different machine equipment and stuff like that. So shout out to Coach Jones. But you mentioned the high school coaching and the private coaching. My question to you, and we have talked about this before, how do we fix that? How do we fix that? To move track forward, how do we fix that gap of the private coaches and the high school coaches?
Well,
in your opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like I said, I'm going to say when something's good. That's a good one. And the best way I can answer that is it just takes somebody to be, I know I'm willing to work with a high school coach. They're out there, so I only can be accountable for me. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to do it. I think the problem is a lot of high school coaches are not willing to do it. Unfortunately.
Right.
Now they'll speak to you and be nice and smile. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they know. I've always been the type of person that if I didn't like who you were or if I had something to say to you, I always stab from the front. I've never been the old school OJs. I'm not a backstabber. Mm-hmm. So I try to tell you what I feel up front, and if you don't like it, I get it. But at least we had a chance to have a conversation. Yeah. And so there are some high school coaches who are willing to collaborate, mm-hmm. but the large majority of them are not willing to collaborate. And so then you have to figure out a way how to do what's best for the athlete with your skill set. Because again, at the end of the day, I've been blessed enough to coach over 100 All-Americans and some work with a lot of Olympians and all that other stuff like that. But at the end of the day, these coaches don't care about that. They see it as they care about it. They basically see it as being territorial.
Mm-hmm. And them getting credit.
What do you say to the parents in regards to that? And because they're more ultimately in control. What do you say to the parents? That
I try to lay that out. That's a great question, and I try to lay out the facts. And I say I'm trying to collaborate. If you want to get here, here's my track record, and this is what it leads to. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody that's been through Daniels High Performance has gone on to college, and over 90% of them are at Power Fours. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, that parent has to trust that process. And then I think parents get stuck in what I call divided loyalties. Mm. They want to stay loyal to whatever because they've been used to it, but at the end of the day, it's not benefiting their child. Mm. So they stick with it. I'm in a situation right now, something like I just told my assistant coach that works with me now that I'm about to have a conversation with a parent. I'm just like, say, you just need to stick with the high school. Mm-hmm. Not because I'm upset because I don't have complete autonomy. It's just that the athlete cannot get better with two diametrically opposed approaches. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you know, and this is what I mean by that. So for someone else, like, what does he mean by that? You'll put say you work with a kid all fall, get him in shape, ready to go. All the coach got to do at the high school level is just add speed, endurance type of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of them taking that kid and even calling you and say, hey, what should I do with this kid? Because they've been with you for 12 weeks, blah, blah, blah. They would go back and tell them to do a whole base period all over again. Yeah. So that kid regresses back to a state of readiness and fitness that doesn't benefit them.
Right.
So those are the things that we are challenged with. When we, as private coaches, when their kids work with us, I don't mind working with a high school coach and say, look, this is what we did in the fall. This is how we got to where we was at. This is what they was running. But they instead, even myself, like, you see, I got this thing on my chest, elite. I'm that person. I've been blessed enough to be given a position where I can do X, Y, and Z. But they still take them back to, guess what? General prep phase. so I've had to accept that, and with this individual that I'm thinking about right now, it's just like, hey, look, you just need to stay over there, don't come back. Let me refund a little bit of your money. Right. And I've always got a favorite saying that all money ain't good money. Mm-hmm. And so I just got to get that money back to that particular parent and let them know that, hey, I'd like to see you again, but I think you just need to stay over there. And it's not an ego thing. It's just like, that it's not helping the athlete be better.
Right.
Yeah. And so we as private coaches have to be honest with ourselves about that process. So it can't be about dollars and cents. That's why when people say, are you private coaching for dollars and cents? I'm like, no, I don't. Because if I really was doing this for money, I would have to change my whole mentality about how I work with people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would have to really be on that grind. And then be disrespectful and argumentative, and that's just not who I am as a person.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't want to be argumentative. I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to be confrontational. I don't want that. And I don't think any of us really want that. I just let things go. So to answer your question, it's very difficult to do it. It really is.
No, that's big.
Yeah, I got two questions like with the same topic. We're gonna extend this a little bit. So for you, like if people want to reach out to you, get in touch with you, if they're remote somewhere in this country, out of this country, whatever, if they really want to work with you, how would they get in touch with you to like check into your services? And then the next one after that is, speaking of the athletes, you're working with the athletes who are the high school athletes with their high school teams. What's a typical work week for an athlete like that who is getting your coaching, but also getting their high school coaching? What does that look like for the athlete?
Yeah, sure,
when you and the coach, specifically when you and the coach are working together in partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great question again. Number one, normally people hit me up through my DM on Daniels High Performance on Instagram, and then I respond back, and then I usually give them my phone number, and then they reach out to me. Secondly, I create a programming with in a collaborative manner with the coach, where we work on a progressive overload program that lasts 6 weeks. I think really good programming is a 6-week process. So I normally create a program and a B program. And what I mean by that, I may run the A program on week 1 and 3, and then the B program on week 2 and 4. And then week 5, I combine them, mixing them up a little bit based on what's going on. And then you be like, well, why is that? Well, because adaptation normally occurs in 28 days. So I try to create 2 systems that are complementary of each other, so that they can be utilized in that 28-day window where they start to adapt, but then I change it because I don't want them to adapt.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because if you allow them to adapt, then stagnation occurs at a certain point of the training process, which you don't want early in the year. So you try to change it up. So I've learned enough about track and field that the 4-week thing doesn't work because it's not enough reps and muscle memory opportunities. And so I've learned that 6 weeks works a lot better because it gives me enough reps and enough muscle memory opportunities to make an adaptation to make change. And then I change it up. And then by the time we say we got the state meet in May, then I go to a more focused 4-week program that allows a particular adaptation in May to prepare for the state meet. So you want to constantly keep the body guessing about what it's supposed to do, honestly. And then, like I said, it comes down to work capacity. I think I want to go back to another part of your question about programming, Coach Humphreys. On say that we compete on Saturday, right? If you compete on Saturday the right way, you're doing short speed endurance, stress endurance 1, and stress endurance 2. Can everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, what really is the next available energy system on Monday? Well, let me answer that for you guys. Try to guess that. The next available energy system on Monday is oxygen. If you go and do crossfills or some type of aerobic work on Monday, it restores the elasticity in the muscle, 1. Then it restores the red blood cells and the capillaries of the muscles to move around and get rid of the lactate from the weekend. So some programs come back and start sprinting on Monday, and then wonder, like, oh my God, they popped their hamstring on Friday. Well, because you sprinted on Saturday, 1 day in between, and then you came back on Monday, and then you did a whole volume of sprint work, and then you did it again on Friday, and then you wonder why they pulled a hamstring. Well, that's because you didn't come back and give them proper restoration. So I try to come back on Mondays after a track meet in particular. I try to come back with, cross fields or starting in the corner of the end zone, running across the field to the other side. I do X's or what I call horseshoes, but it's something geared towards oxygen or either 15-minute, 12-minute run, something like that. So then I come back on Tuesday with what I call a stack workout. I may run 60, 80, 60, and then 3 minutes between that, and then take a 15-minute rest and come back and run 1 times. And like, matter of fact, let me give you a quick example of what I do. Like, I'll go 60, 80, 60, and then I'll go 3 minutes between that, and then I'll go 10 minutes of rest, 15 minutes of rest. Then I'll go 1 times 120. Then week 2, I may put in a B plan where I may go 8 times 40 meters, 3 minutes of rest, and then come back with a 80 fly, something like that. And then I'll come back on week 1, I'm going to mimic week 1 with the same thing, but that 120 turns into a 150. So then there's a progressive overload there. You see what I'm saying? And so it kind of keeps the body kind of going back and forth, and then it keeps the kids fresh. It keeps that going a certain way, and then next thing you know, you're in 6 weeks, and then you can kind of project a certain number. I always use target times. I don't never train an athlete without target times. I think target times create energy system development and velocity development. So if you say I want to run 11:55, well, you need to look at a chart of whatever distance you're going to run, and you need to put a target time for that 40 for what it's supposed to be. Yep. Or if it's a 120, or if it's a 300, or if it's a 500. So the target times dictate the energy system development, because the energy systems all turn on at the same time. If the audience is not aware of that, the energy systems turn on at the same time. So you got 8 to 7, then you got 8 to 20, and then 20 to 40, and then 40 and beyond. So what dominates that particular energy system development is the actual rep and the distance of what you're training. So that gives you an opportunity to develop the energy system at such a level where it has the work capacity to do what it's supposed to do. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I don't hope I wasn't.
You're gonna have coaches on here with pens and papers, like right now. You're gonna have too much free game. Too much free game.
Before we get into the next segment, I have one question going back to the beginning of the training phases, prehab, and all of that. What are some of your favorite testing things that you like to do in the beginning of the year? What are some? There's several things you can do, but what are some of your?
No, but
several of your indicators?
I got you. Trust me, I've been using these same tests for 30 years. I always go to a 30-meter test, 5-bound test, 60-second sit-up test, 60-second push-up test. And then that's my first part of my testing. Okay. Then I will build our way into 300-meter testing. Mm-hmm. So we'll keep the same testing, 5-bound, 30-meter. Then it'll be a 300 test, and then 600. Then I added 600 into that. And then by the third set of testing, I do the same thing. I go to a fly because it takes normally about 10 to 12 weeks to develop the ability to run flies. Mm-hmm. So then I'll do a fly 30. Mm-hmm. Then I'll do, again, a 10-bound test versus a 5-bound test. Mm-hmm. So by that time, they should be able to develop the work capacity to go at least 10 bounds by that time, right? And then I'll come back and I'll test a 150 midweek, and then we'll come back and test that 600 again. And then I may do the 600 in the middle of the week, and then I'll come back on that Saturday and test 45-second run for the men and 50-second run for the women. Mm. But that's weeks 12 and 14.
Okay.
But the workouts that I've done have led me, or either I bled the workouts to set those tests up for the athletes to have success.
You have to. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so somebody said, well, you run 600s? Yes, I do. This is how I do my 600s. Mm-hmm. I usually do them outside of the stadium. They're not on the track. Mm-hmm. I get a big old field, and I'll measure out 600 meters, and then we'll run 600 meters not using a track. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't give the athletes the opportunity to hate the run. Mm-hmm. because at some point, you're going to be on a track, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want the athletes to hate the track because they're going around and around it so much. So I try to use soccer fields, big fields outside of football stadiums, and that's how I measure my 600-meter runs that way, initially to give them a break from the monotony of being on the track. I normally do not put on spikes until after Thanksgiving, most cases.
Right.
I'm in flats and socks and bare feet, basically until then, because I'm trying to develop the intrinsic muscles of the foot and all that type of stuff. So we don't really do, we don't put on spikes until basically almost Thanksgiving or either after.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I love that.
Love it.
So as we move and progress into the next segment, the Nike Elite program, you also serve as the head of sprints and hurdles for the Nike Elite program. Can you talk about that role and the program, and how it's designed for the elite high school athletes?
Yeah. I don't say this lightly. I am so honored to be in this position because I've been blessed to do the selections for a lot of these kids, and I've been a part of some of the biggest races ever in high school that's happened, like with the Tate Taylors at last year in Eugene when we had Brady Williams and Tate and all them together. The 60s at Melrose. I've been a part of all of some of the best races in high school history. And one of the main things I try to do in these selections with Nike Elite is I look at there's a person named and this goes back to Coach Holloway at Florida who I've also considered a good friend, along with Lonnie Green and the other guys like that. Now Knutson had a program called Over Under, and it was built on distance principles, but I took them and manipulated them around to sprint principles. So I look for athletes that can run over and under. And what I mean by that, if you can run 60, I need to see you to be able to run 200. If you can run 200, you should be able to run 400. And so I look at the athlete's profile and see if they have over-under tendencies in their competitions. All right. The second thing I look at is that anybody can run fast when there's no competition. But how well do you run in your state meet, your conference meet, and then at Nike indoors or even New Balance or Adidas? So I look at that because a lot of people run fast when there's no pressure. Mm-hmm. So that's how I kind of get a composite of what we're doing with the selection process of people who come in Nike Elite. Thus far, I've been extremely blessed and fortunate to kind of hit a home run with a lot of the athletes, including Anthony's daughter. She was incredible. I liked everything about it. I was friends with her coach at Jason with Amax, and then they had a certain situation set up. So that's how I kind of did it. So I look at over-under tendencies. I look at how they participate in the national meets. When I was talking to Coach Humphreys, when I met him at Nike a couple of years ago with his daughter Megan, it was just one of those things where, we talked and it was like, oh, yeah, that falls in line with what it takes for long-term development. So when Keelan was coming up, all that, she was doing everything in line with what I call long-term development models. And so if you're unwilling and you tell somebody, I don't run the 400, I don't run the 4x4 and all that, those are automatic no's to get into the Nike Elite program. Automatic.
Coach, you want to say that? You want to say that one more time?
So yeah, those are automatic no's. If you're not willing, because long-term development requires that type of work, energy system wise, in the 400. Lionel Pugh of Great Britain said many years ago that short sprint athletes require more volume than what they're willing to actually produce. And so this is something that he wrote 30 years ago. And so when I read that, it made sense to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very relevant and prevalent now that if an athlete tells you, I don't run the 4x4 or I won't do this, I won't do that, they're not built for high performance. Because high performance requires that. Mm-hmm. It requires that. I can remember watching, I'm from Virginia. And so I was home during the period of Noah Lyles. I remember watching Noah Lyles run the 55, 300, and 500 in one meet. Mm-hmm. I remember watching the other athletes that I've seen over the years run all those different distances, and it served them well to where they are now. Mm-hmm. So again, and the reason why I think it's important, and I hope the audience understands this, you cannot specialize early because specialization means stagnation. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get stagnant at some point of your career because you specialize too early. That's why it's better for high school coaches to create more general programming for the high school athletes so that the college coaches who are over the next 4 years, then they fall into that long-term development age model where when you're 17 and above, you start specialization, acclimation things. Let the college coach specialize the athlete. Okay,
I love that.
So that's kind of how I see it. I think that's their game. If you got, not trying to be offensive to anybody, so please everybody understand that I'm not trying to be offensive, but understand that if you got people power cleaning, snatching, all that type of stuff this early, what are you leaving on the menu for the coach that's at the next level? Mm-hmm. What's on the menu? Because you only can snatch, clean, and squat so much. Mm-hmm. But if you've never done it before and you stick with the traditional lifts or what I call functional lifting, and then you let the college coach take over from there, they could benefit your son or daughter a whole lot more if a lot more meat was left on the bone. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I see this thing, and like I said, I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Anthony over the last couple of years, and Coach Humphreys as well, and we've talked about these things and how we how I've been able to help develop Nike program with Josh Rowe and with Michelle Freeman now, and these are the things that we talk about behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And I can't thank them enough for allowing me to be me. They allow me to be me. Michelle is the program director, and I'm the high performance person and in charge of that. But they allow me to be me, based on my experiences. And so I can't thank them enough for allowing me to be who I am. You know, I love working with Micah and my whole group with Aaron and Julie Benson, who's still coaching a lot of high caliber distance runners and things like that. So for me, I've been able to just to be me, and it's been able to work very well for the organization, for the athletes that I've been able to work with. Over the last several years. I think if you look at the Nike Elite program, you see we've been able to bring in some really good kids. Absolutely. And they've been phenomenal, but the coaches and the parents have been pliable. You know, we've all developed good relationships. We collaborate with each other. You know, we have conversations not only about track. I mean, Coach, me and Anthony, I hate to keep on referring to Anthony, but Anthony, I tell you, we have more conversations about other stuff than just track. You know, so I like the fact that I'm able to become a trusted friend to my parents and to the athletes. It does, like I said, it does my heart glad to be able to be of service in that capacity and be transparent about how to be in this program, how to navigate it, how to make your college selection. Like I said, I don't choose schools for athletes. I give a platform that we go through at the Nike in Beaverton. We do these, when they come in there, we fly them in, and then we do a whole thing in Beaverton about the program. We talk about recruiting and what to look for. It's very holistic. You know, we're not just giving out money for people to come to track meets. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a sports science part of it. There's a nutrition part of it. There's a workout part. From this year past, we had a seminar at the AP Ranch, thanks to Greg Scholars with the AP Ranch group, that we was able to go down there in January and do a speed seminar. In January, they invited the coaches that were attached to the athletes, along with the athletes, to Fort Worth, Texas, to go to a speed seminar that we was able to evaluate their technique with Dr. Ken Clark. Mm-hmm. So again, you know, it's a big thing, and there's no disrespect to my other counterparts and who do other stuff, but our program is very holistic. And, we're not perfect, but we do work in a perfect heart towards making sure the athletes get better.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Let me ask you this. What do you think what's the difference between an athlete who's just talented to just being truly elite? Like, what is that jump or that gap between the two?
The first thing that comes to mind is strictly this work ethic, my friend. Mm-hmm. Work ethic. There's a lot of athletes that say they want to be something, but they're just not in them. And the reason why I say it's not in them is not because they don't have the ability, but as you guys know, as parents, I don't know if all of us are probably parents. You parent, as all of us on here are parents, per se. Yes. So as a parent, you try to influence your children to do what's right. You try to influence them to be independent, not codependent. Especially when they peer group. You find athletes that are super talented, but for whatever reason, they become codependent to their friend, to their tribe. Mm-hmm. So they begin not to listen to reason. So the athlete that's able to listen to reason and find the right tribe that's going in the same direction as them, they're the ones that are usually successful. Mm. As simple as that. It's not anything special. It's just about them being able to say, no, I'm not going to do this. I got to go do this. No, I'm committed to this, not that. And that's why I say a lot of times when my colleagues that are on collegiate side, I'm not being a mouthpiece for my collegiate coaches, but I do want to speak on this area because sometimes they get a bad rap. When you recruit a kid, they tell you, I want to be a national champion. They tell you, I want to be an Olympian. They tell you, I want to be a conference champion. But they line up with mule work ethic. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, they become stubborn. They're not committed to the process. They don't want to eat. They don't want to go to sleep. They want to drink the alcohol and wonder why so there's so many things that happen that my colleagues at the collegiate level do not have control over. Mm-hmm. So when people say, this program is bad, you might want to dig a little deeper than that. Yeah. Because you know why I say that in the defense of my colleagues? Because they're trying to eat. Right. Don't nobody want to get fired from their job. Right. So why would a coach mistreat somebody? Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like I said, I think it works two ways. Now, there's some situations where things just don't work. I get that. Right. And I think we all get that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, to think that these gentlemen are going to do something advantageous to how they eat and feed their families, I think you need to revisit that thought process.
I love that. Love that.
From your perspective, what are some of the qualities to make an elite sprinter and a hurdler? What are some qualities that they need to develop in order to get better?
Coach,
you may have already touched on this.
Love it. No. I love it. I think I'm gonna go back to you and your child. Mm-hmm. One of the most important things you've done with your daughter is you taught her the intimacy of knowledge for her events.
Yeah.
So the athlete that becomes knowledgeable about their events, they become much more coachable. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they become much more coachable because you have great conversations about what didn't work.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
You can say, "Hey, I ran at this thing, coach." I'll be like, "Oh, I think I need a couple more minutes of rest." You can have really good dialogue, and I've always been a learner. I can't remember where I saw this saying before, but I saw a saying many years ago that practice is a laboratory of learning, mm-hmm. And that laboratory of learning calls for collaboration of the coach and the athlete, and they have to discuss what's going on in those sessions for them to be successful. So the difference for me is the athlete that knows their event can ask the right questions and ask the right questions in terms of not because they're trying to discount what you're telling them, but ask the questions to understand what you're telling them. And there's a difference there. Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of kids that ask questions like, well, I'm going to ask coach this question, see what he say. See, and then they'll be like, I told you he ain't know nothing. Nah, they're not trying to learn anything.
Yeah.
But the athlete that comes to you and say, "Coach, what do you mean by this? Can you explain to me what you're trying to get me to do?" And that helps build what I call the organic and authentic relationship of coach athlete. Mm-hmm. Okay. Same thing with Keelan. Athletes taught Keelan a lot. She understands the game. Same thing with, and I don't know about the other coaches in her life, but I do know about Jason Campos. I know how he feels about sprinting. I know he's trying to teach, and so most of the successful coaches are teachers, and in particular, teaching is a relational, active sport. Yeah. If you're not teaching in a relational, active way, then you come across with bad results because the teaching that you're doing isn't relational and it isn't active, so the kids don't pick up anything, so they do their own thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important.
You know what? I can agree with that. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, as being a high school coach, it's like, we on a track team, we might have, 200 kids, 80 of them sprints and jumps and all that. So we get what we get. Every kid's not necessarily into knowing, learning, whatever, but it's like for the kids that want the knowledge. It's like, I love that. Because I want you to understand it. I want you to know everything everything that I can teach you, because I feel like a more informed athlete is a better athlete, especially if they know why we're doing stuff, why I'm asking you to do this, and they're going to get more out of it. I'm going to get more out of it from them. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah, and see, and let's go back to that. Like, everybody's not cut out to run track. So like, we got a team of 200 people, and that's fine. But out of 200, only 16 is going to be real.
You hear that, Anthony?
You know what I'm saying? This is just what it is. Because you got to be honest with the kids and say, look, I know everybody out here ain't going to love track like the way I do.
Right.
But if you want to go to college, you want an opportunity for me to be the best coach for you, I need you to do this. If you aren't willing to do this, and this is a social sport for you, I ain't got a problem with that. You in group E, F, and G. That means when you show up, and I ain't got no expectations of you.
Yeah,
it ain't nothing personal.
We talk about that a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. But if you in A, B, C, and D, I need you here these many days a week. I need you to do this. You got your weight training. I don't mind what if I was a high school coach and you guys' position. I don't mind having what I call recreational athletes.
Yeah,
they good people. They don't mean no harm, but they can't become distractions.
No. So I'm gonna use you how I need to use you. That's how I'm gonna do it.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. If you're recreational If you don't want to sacrifice Christmas to train,
right.
If you don't want to sacrifice the summer because you're going on a cruise, I ain't got no problem with that.
Spring break, coach. Spring break too.
Yeah, spring break. If you want to go to spring break and get a tan, I get that too. But at the end of the day, I was hired to produce champions. I was hired to do this. So what I'm saying to you all, if I was still a high school coach, I would lay my program down as not only as a coaching mechanism, I would tell people this is a high performance program. And high performance programs expect results.
I love that. Before we go on, coach, so like,
yes, sir.
I love how you shared, like you do it for you wanted to do it like for the community. You wanted to do, get into coaching for, people that look like ourselves and stuff like that. But I think that's very genuine, and you speak from the heart. And I can relate to that because I think sometimes we all get a bad rap. Those that say that we want to do that, we get a bad rap. But it's a breath of fresh air to hear you say it at the level that you coach at and the amount of success that you've had, because a lot of people feel like you have to be that cursor, that yeller, that person who's always showing out in regards to how much talent they have. But you're willing to take that athlete who wants to take the time to be developed. You have that family unit, and they have that support for that athlete to take that time to develop them. I appreciate you saying that because you don't always have to be the coach that's the loudest one in the room, or the loudest one at the meet, or the one wearing all the brightest clothes to show out. Like I'm that guy that's coaching these athletes. I appreciate you saying that and being authentic and genuine, because a lot of people always feel that you always have to be the loudest one in the room.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Anthony and I met like that basically, because he was like, "Oh, you such and such." Like, "Oh yeah, I'm him. I'm that guy." But I don't go to a track meet. I don't wear this at track meets. I wear regular clothes. I just go there to observe. I just want to be part of the crowd. I want to build relationships. I want to observe the athletes in their natural habitat, how they conduct themselves. And I'm not looking to be very loud about who I am. So I appreciate you saying that, because that's not been my motive. I never want to come into a situation where I overshadow the process. And so I think it's important that, there are some people like that, unfortunately, in all sports. But I think in particular in our sport, people take ownership of athletes like, that is my athlete. That is this, that is that. And those athletes aren't yours. Track and field is a sport built on individual talent with team concepts. There's only 2 or 3 events in track and field that got a relay in it. Everything else is, the other 16 events are individualized. So it's not a team sport. So that's why I'm more always willing to take a person that is not willing to develop their individual talent. I'd rather for them not to come train with me.
Right.
Because being a part of a relay, it hides your identity. It's a pseudo effect of success. It's not who you are. It hides your work ethic. A lot of people run well for a relay, but how hard they run for themselves?
Yeah.
Right. You see, how many of us seen people? You be like, I didn't know it was that fast. Put a stick in their hand, they moving.
Right.
But when you tell them to work hard to build their own brand for themselves as an individual, coach, that's too much. I didn't know it'd take that much to be that fast. But you put a stick in their hand, you see the talent.
So when it comes to recruiting, their mom and dad want to tell you the relay split, as if that means something.
Relay, and for the audience, relay splits don't get you paid. I can tell you that now.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, you said, leave some meat on the bone for the next coach, right?
Yes, sir.
So how do you balance pushing athletes to reach elite levels when still protecting their long-term development? How do you balance that, coach? Because I know that's a thin line. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it is. I will not, for me personally, I will not use a 1080 on a high school kid in my group. Okay, me personally. That's leaving meat on the bone. I'm a person that believe in place jumps, the bounding, the sled pulls, and then using the volume of doing that to leave meat on the bones for a 1080 or apex. Okay, that's how I see it. I would rather use traditional lifts and functional weight training. What I mean by functional weight training, I'm talking about using dumbbells only with snatches and cleans and single leg pistols and things like that. Leave all that. I'll do all of that for them to go to college to learn how to hang clean, squat. We squat, but the hang clean, power clean, or whatever they're gonna do in college, I'd rather for them to do that. Because track and field, and then you guys would agree with this, I would hope, that unilateral development of the muscle tissue is far better than taking kids to a weight training program, learning how to power clean and snatch with muscle imbalances, bad technique, and they can't snatch the right weight. It just doesn't do them any good. So it's better to keep them kids healthier and develop them in a very symmetrical way by using single leg and unilateral movements to prepare them for the collegiate level. On top of that, you minimize the opportunity for injury because now the left leg may be not as strong as the right leg, but they're both firing optimally in a linear direction to run fast in 100 or to triple jump or the long jump, as opposed to doing a lot of other lifts that would allow them to have one leg dominate the other. And, so I've always been a person that done a lot of unilateral lifting, and then I go into the other type of lifts. And if you do it the right way, if you bleed everything out, most weight training programs take 12 weeks. If you bleed it out the right way, because you can go from 3 sets, 2 sets to 1 set. And there's been enough research out here. If you go online and look it up, one set of lifting could be just as effective as 3 sets of lifting, just based on the exercise selection. So that's how I do it. And so I thank you for the question. That's how I'm able to do what I do, because I'll go 3 sets in September, October, mid-October. I'm going down to 2 when we racing. Man, we lift on Friday morning at 6:30 before we race on Saturday. We may race on Friday night, but we lift in 1 set at 50% in the morning. So we still lifting. Then when I get to the outdoor season, then I'll take that away because I'm looking for a performance. But you have to be willing to bet on yourself to not do all that. Oh, every race is important. Every race is not important on the track.
A lot of parents believe that it is. That's a parent thing too. A lot of parents, they're like, "Wow, how come they're not developing? How come they're not PRing?" It's a lot. Like, what could you say in regards to that? Like, because I like that statement. Every race is not.
Yeah. Well, every race, even with a PR. Okay, a PR is a PR. That's an anomaly, because that means that moment you ran your best. So if you ran, let's say hypothetically, I just throw a number out there. You ran 820 as a PR, but the other races you ran 865 and 870. Does that make you an 820 sprinter? No, it doesn't. It make you an 860 sprinter, because you had one time where you ran that fast. So, and usually the kids that do that, they're chasing a PR. Those are the ones that underperform because they get into outside noise of telling them you got a PR every time you step on the track. That's not even humanly possible. Okay, so be consistent at 820 versus 860, because there's a difference there. 860 don't get you no money, but 820 will.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're being consistent, and the coach can count on you being consistent at that particular number. So you can't be all over the map with your training. So that's why it's important for the coaches to understand, periodization and peaking and, things like that to help navigate that process for the athlete. But also you have to be transparent enough. And I think, again, going back to your question with the parents, and look, your child will not PR every race. What I want is consistency. I want to make sure we're ready for this meet. And what I mean by that, you could have a state meet and you say, look, the state meet calls for this. This regional meet calls for me to get you ready to qualify for this. I need to get you qualified right here. So the next 6 weeks to 8 weeks, we're going to build ourselves to where you can qualify.
Right.
And if a PR happens, God, I'm happy.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then it lowers expectations. It lowers the temperature of the room. But the parents who are not being overzealous and living vicariously through their children, those are the ones that are going to understand. Because unfortunately, you have some parents that live vicariously through their children, and they're going to disguise it as I want what's best for them. So, again, I try to be honest.
I love that.
So, I'm just saying, wanting what's best for them may not meet the moment.
Yeah. So, what would be your advice to a coach who wants to develop high level sprinters and hurlers? Like, what would be your advice that you'll?
Yeah. My advice is just to study and then find some really good mentors. There's enough of us out here that, believe it or not, will answer our email, will answer our DM. There's some great coaches out here, and track and field at the high school level has exploded. There's some great coaches at the high school level. They really are. There's some great people at this level, but there are also some coaches that are using things to build their resume versus building the athlete's resume. Because again, what happens is you have a lot of kids, and again, just look at what goes on throughout the country. This is not nothing that takes rocket science. Look at the number of kids that you see every year that are a high level in high school, but get to college, and you don't really hear nothing.
Right.
And so I don't want to be that guy, and I hope my colleagues and people who are listening don't want to be that person that had an athlete in high school but went to a certain place and you never heard of them again.
Right.
Okay. Now, a lot is with that because, again, like I said, it's not all the coach's fault at the next level, but it could be you did too many 1080s. You may have did too much whatever. You may have done too much heavy squatting. May have done too much clean, whatever. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there's anecdotal evidence, if you're paying attention, that there are a lot of athletes, high caliber athletes, every year that go to college, and for whatever reason, they're not doing well. They're not on the Olympic team. These are the people that make you be like, where do they come from? You ain't never heard of them before.
Right.
There's never, and then let's just even be more transparent. How many age group champions and age group phenoms have you seen make the world team or the Olympic team? There's not a whole lot.
Right. Yep.
And I'll wait for somebody to give me an answer on that one. There's not a lot of people that you saw as age group phenoms in the AAU, USATF circuit that were national champions at the collegiate level or nothing. You have to look at all that information. So I'm a person that takes in data and look at everything and say, okay, this is how we got to do our program here with the Nike Elite program. We don't want coaches that are telling the kids to do certain things to short circuit the opportunities of growth. But if you take a quiet moment and think about this for a second, you think about all the people you've seen in you guys' time on this earth, in the age group level, high school level, and then they went to sign a place to go to college. Think about how many made the national team. Think about how many were national champions.
Not many.
Not that many.
It's not very many. And you know why it's not very many? Because they end up not doing age appropriate training. There are a lot of times they're doing things that are not age appropriate. They're doing some things that short circuit their CNS, which is central nervous system. They're lifting too heavy. They're not doing, that's why I believe in functional lifting, because functional lifting does not allow you to short circuit a lot of things with the athlete.
Yeah.
So you have to take a deliberate path of basically saying, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to live with these results. But with Daniels High Performance, I've been able to get the results of a lot of these high school kids that I work with because they're built off of some principles that I strongly believe in terms of functional lifting, progressive overloading, and making sure that I'm developing their core strength for them to be successful at the next thing. And that takes time. So I don't change programs every 4 weeks. Like I said, I've given as much as I can on training. I may change a program 6 to 8 weeks because I'm maximizing the strength opportunities in that. I'm taking them to the full level of doing that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I watched something on the internet and this person said, "Hey, you need to change your program every 4 to 5 weeks." Okay. Well, if the athlete has not attained the strength mechanisms in that lifting program or the running mechanisms in the program, why are we moving? Why are we moving? Because if you move and they haven't acquired the skill set to do the next thing, then you basically, for a better lack of a word, you're retarding their growth. And so then all of a sudden, they're not running well. So you have to be really careful about that. So I take very deliberate actions on what Dane's High Performance does. I'm making sure that I'm bleeding out whatever we're doing and make sure that I see the next number. And there's numbers out here that tell you need to lift 2.5 times your body weight on this. You need to do this. But I've always been a strong believer that if you can get a female to do 30 push-ups, you're winning.
Yeah.
You're winning. Because that means their body strength is up. They can handle certain things. Because generally speaking, women's shoulders are normally, like I said, normally weaker than men. If you get a woman to squat a time and a half at a minimum of her body weight on a squat, you're winning. 2.5, yeah, that's great to have. But sometimes 2.5 is too much.
Yeah.
Because sometimes their bodies ain't built to be, 2.5 times strong as their body weight. So you have to be able to, discern what's the right limit for a certain athlete. So that's where it happens at. And so with Dane's High Performance and with Nike Elite Program and me working with some great coaches, that's how we've been able to be successful. Like I said, talking with Jason and talking with Anthony on, Danny, McCray, Kevin, we talk all the time, about these things, and about how to get better. And I listen to what they say, and I may give an opinion on that, and then go from there. I've talked with Joey who coaches Destiny Coleman. We just have good conversation. That's what this program is all about, and is to find the numbers and find ways to help the people that we are trying to serve to get better.
Well, I want to touch on something because like I know you have a lot of relationship with coaches and stuff like that, and on this call, we can see like, hey, you definitely, you are there for the college coaches. My question is, sometimes college coaches get athletes and they may not be getting the same result that they get in high school and stuff like that. Is there a reason, or maybe is there a reason why that college coach may not reach out to the high school coach or personal trainer to get information on, okay, what can we do, or what were you doing to get this athlete to where they at? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't want to say, I don't want to make it plain and simple, but sometimes it just comes down to ego. Because at this point, sometimes, I can't speak for everybody, but sometimes, and as us as humans, we don't want to feel that the next person has an answer to our problem that's beneath us. So a college coach might say, I don't want to go back to the high school because what I'm talking to him or her for. Because I recruited them. That's my athlete now. So now it comes a sense of ownership. And I can't say that every coach thinks that, but if you're unable to, and you make a great point. If you can't take athletes nowadays that are high caliber. Heck, no, I'm not going to use Coach Humphreys as an example. You can't take athletes as a high caliber. You only need to do 10% to get them better.
Yeah,
that's it. That's my personal opinion, and I'm sure some people may not agree with me on the college side and this and that. I get it, but I've never not spoke what I believe to be true. I think, in my opinion, if you get these athletes 10% better, coming out of high school, to give them an opportunity to get acclimated to your system, you get better results.
Wow,
that's what I humbly believe. Being a person that's been in the collegiate system, I'm on this side of it, and then I talk to these parents. I'm talking to you all, and I listen to what the athlete goes through mentally, because they're not the same person as they were when they got there.
Right.
Because that's the other side of the conversation that people don't understand. That these athletes, when they're not the person that they were when they got there, that's where the mental health part comes in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's where that part comes in at.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you have to. Well, you don't have to, because some people don't. It is my hope that you find a way to collaborate with the previous coach, because what the previous coach did obviously got them recruited to sign with your school.
Right.
So if that coach was with that athlete and you signed them because they were under your leadership, then it sounds like it would be better to ask them what actually worked.
Mm-hmm.
So that way that the young man or the young woman can obtain the objectives that they came there for.
Right.
So it's hard. It's hard to get that done sometimes. And like I said, I don't have an answer to that. But I do, like I said, you're right. I spoke up for my colleagues on collegiate side, because I've seen athletes come to college,
yeah.
And then when they get there, the first thing they do, they start hanging out.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you get the freshman 15. And then you wonder why you ain't moving the same way. Well, your body ain't the same.
Right.
And it's hard for people to accept that fact. Mm-hmm. Then I think the other second most important thing that's difficult, because I'm a race management, like I said, I'm about data and stats. Mm-hmm. Athlete, I talked to a coach today. His athlete ran 18 hurdle races to get one result. Okay? Wow. Now, if an athlete has run that many races in high school and we get to college, you only get 4 meets. Now, am I lying, Anthony?
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts.
The college system is short. Mm-hmm. So the way you achieve the results with them in high school will not be the same in college. That's why it's important for the athletes to be able to run 4x4s and run some other events, because it gives them races.
Yeah.
Okay. In college, of course, they put you in the 60. In high school, you was guaranteed to make the finals. In college, you're not. Mm-hmm. You're gonna be one and done. Mm-hmm. So the number of reps are way different now.
Right.
Because for better lack of an analogy, you actually are running yourself in shape. You actually taking the osmosis of competition and developing your skill set, because you're competing on a regular basis, and your mojo is different because you basically racing twice a week. Right. But when you get to college, you're not doing that.
Right.
You're not doing that. So that's why it's important. That's why I kind of developed the idea of maybe you just need to get a person's coming out of high school and into college that's 10% better, because there's not enough races for them to run no 10 or 12 races or 15 races before they get to that. You only get about 6 races, maybe 6 to 8. And so that's why I say if you look at everything transparently. Mm-hmm. And just take everything in, it's nobody's fault. It's just understanding what you're not doing versus what you was doing in high school.
Yeah.
And so if you understand that you're not going to go to college and run no 12, 10 races by the end of January, then you've got to train harder in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? That's why I said my colleagues in college, it's not necessarily their fault. It's just like that. It just sometimes there's a misunderstanding about what's happening in the fall training for them to be better, because there are not the opportunities that they had in high school.
Right. And that's why I think freshmen, it's funny you say that, because that's why I think freshmen get it wrong. And this has kind of been my conversation to get my kid to understand is, all right, if you and Sally, because I don't want to say no names, if you and Sally are doing the same thing every day, it's only a certain percentage of when y'all can get better to each other. But if you do something extra, whether that's you in your room and you're doing sit-ups and push-ups, that's making you better than the person. Because if you're okay with it just doing, hey, I'm just going to lift weights when we're supposed to lift weights, work out when I'm supposed to work out, you're not going to be better than the next person, because everyone's doing the same thing. So what's going to make you better? You have to do something that makes you better, which you were doing on the high school side. You weren't doing your average high school thing.
Right. I completely agree with that. I agree with that. You have to do it. It's just the reps are not there for you when your season hit. You know, if we're talking about in particular like the SEC, the SEC travels 27, I believe 27 people indoor with a +2 and 29 people with a +2 outdoor. That's 31 and 29. You got 45 on the roster. Who traveling? How you making yourself different? Goes to your point. How you doing it? How you doing that? Somebody every weekend somebody's doing this, waving somebody goodbye. You know what I'm saying? Every weekend somebody's being left behind. And then when you're left behind, what are you doing? Are you partying, drinking, getting better, running? So that's what I'm saying. Like it's such a big difference going from the collegiate system into from the high school system to collegiate, because now you have to find a way to get better. And you have to have a relationship with your coach. They say, coach, okay, I didn't make the bus this week. What I got to do to get better?
Right.
You know what kids say when instead of the kids asking that same question, like when we came up, so like we OGs. So when we trying to get better, we say, hey, coach, what I got to do, man, get on that bus.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, these kids probably a lot of them say, man, coach tripping. He don't like me. He don't like me, man.
Tripping. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They ain't feeling my vibe.
Yeah.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say it's not a lot of my colleagues' fault where things ain't going well. It's just about the athlete recognizing what they came for, finding a way to stay relevant with the coach, and then finding a way, if you ain't on that bus, how I'm going to get on that bus? What I got to do? And it doesn't mean that you need to call home and talk to your high school coach and then how you do some other stuff behind the coach's back. That calls for you to tell the coach, can you give me some extra? Because the system's different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like I said, I'm just being transparent and honest. You know, I'm sure there's some college coaches that can do some things better with relationships and things like that. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, a number of them come there and then they lose themselves in the first 3 weeks of their collegiate experience because they're hanging out, they're eating, they're hanging, partying, whatever.
Yeah, get that freedom.
Yeah, the freedom changes. So that's why I can't necessarily say it's always the collegiate system's fault, because it's not. I know there's been a lot of talk by certain people about having too many races. I read enough books in my life to know that if you haven't raced enough, your body biologically can't make any changes. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was like, well, I remember over in Europe, they only had one peak system. I said, you know why they did that in Europe? It was cold. It was cold outside.
Yeah.
If you think about the Europeans and the weather over in Europe and Germany and Russia and places like Poland, it's cold.
Right.
So they went to a single peak system because of the weather, not because it was best for the athlete. A lot of people in Poland and Russia didn't run until May. So if you started in September, you single peak because you couldn't get outside, do nothing else.
Right.
So why are you copying a single peak system for weather that was designed for 30 to 40 degrees and you over here in America?
Yeah.
Gotta make it make sense.
That makes sense. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong now.
Nah.
So you're, technically the systems in America should be built on, in my opinion, on 3 peaks, because you got indoor, you got outdoor, and you got postseason.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare for 3 peaks because you want the athlete to run in those 3 peaks. If you're not actively doing that as a coach, because I actively do that for the people that I work with, I run the 3 peak system.
Yeah.
Based on whatever the meets are located at, I say, hey, we got a state meet, we got an outdoor state meet, and then we got nationals. So that requires 3 peaks. So for those of you who say, well, what do you mean you need 3 peaks? Indoor, outdoor, and the national level. That's 3 peaks. If you're only doing 1 peak, you're doing a disservice to the athlete because you're staying too long in certain training methodologies that do not explore explosiveness, acceleration, and power.
Yeah. Well, Coach Will, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Well, no, you know what I was gonna say though, when you were talking about periodization, I ain't gonna lie. I've been one of those 4 week coaches, but I will revisit it. I will definitely. I'm gonna talk to you some more about it. I will revisit that and definitely consider the 6 week. But yeah, I love hearing that.
One of my favorite books is Tudor Bopa on
Hmm.
periodization. He the father
Hmm.
of periodization is Tudor Bopa.
Hmm.
And if you look at his area on anatomical adaptation, you'll see what I
Hmm.
mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
So,
reading. Got all the books behind him.
oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
So, Coach, one thing I want, we don't want to hold you too long. We know you
Oh
got
yeah,
a
no problem. No
busy
problem.
weekend ahead, but I want to ask you, like, for stress management, do you have a template for coaches like myself who have reached out to you for particular athletes, to try to get into the Nike Indoor Nationals or outdoor or whatever? Do you have a template to just like send to coaches? Because I know a lot of coaches here, in the States are really trying to get their kids that they train into that meet. But I'm just, it's just joking. But I'm just saying, I know it's a lot of stress and that comes with the selection process. You mentioned how you select and what you do to do it. But I know, is there something that you do to kind of give yourself and put yourself at ease in regards to the selection process when it comes to that?
Yeah. No, I think all these are great questions because um, it's challenging because you don't ever want to feel like you're leaving somebody behind
Yeah.
Hmm.
and taking somebody's dream away from them.
Hmm.
And that's not what we're in it for. And so I think that's a very good question. And then my response to that is I think it's better for coaches to have a high performance model in their thinking versus just being a coach.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because when you're just a coach, you think a collection of workouts.
Hmm.
When you're a high performance person, you think a collection of programming.
Yeah.
Okay. What program is going to do this for this many weeks? How am I going to extend acceleration for this many weeks? As opposed to if I do this workout, I'm going to get this. If I do this workout, I'm going to do that. That's a different conversation internally,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't provide you the framework to maximize the kids' opportunities.
Hmm.
So I think more importantly, I think what you're asking is that I encourage all of you anyone to think more as a high performance coach because
Hmm.
it allows you to dig deeper into the how, what, and whens. And like Coach Hunter just said, yeah, the books tell you 4 weeks, but 28 to 38, 28 to 35 days, that's
Hmm.
when adaptation occurs for a
Hmm.
lot of stuff. So 4 weeks doesn't allow adaptation to really occur because you may not have repeated the same stuff enough in 4 weeks
Yeah.
of rehearsal for an
Hmm.
adaptation to occur.
Hmm.
So that's why it's important to know your system and have the right type of people in your corner that can help you do that. You got to be well read a little bit, and just spend and then like I said, one of the things that I'll say for myself proudly is I was willing to bet on myself.
Hmm.
Like I bought my own books. I didn't ask for nothing. I bought books on biomechanics. Like I said biochemistry. I bought books on the brain, how people's sensory motor skills develop and things like that. So I actually dug into some things that helped me understand the sport better.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think you can I think that's what I would encourage everybody to do. I think the Nike thing, yeah, it can be stressful because it's
Hmm.
always evolving and it's people are getting faster. And
Yeah.
then so now you have to figure out how can I get my athletes to be at that level to do X, Y, and Z. And so you have to spend time on your craft and figure out how to create a program and programming to
Hmm.
benefit your athletes. Like I said, I develop my programs off of energy system development. So I can take whatever I do and apply it to an adult all the way down to somebody that's 10 years old. And so
Hmm.
what changes is the number of reps and the rest periods and things like that to get the results. But it's not about the workouts. Everything's always about the energy system for me, how I'm going to
Hmm.
develop it. I think one of the most important things that just popped in my brain that you all can learn is the Krebs cycle.
Hmm.
You go back and study the Krebs cycle, it'll tell you a lot about lactate shuttle and lactate and how it goes through the body and then how to do it. A lot of coaches, a lot of athletes will sit around after they run a rep that's designed around lactate. In my practices, we do ins and outs. We're constantly moving and lactate as we move. We don't sit down. I don't allow them to fall out. None of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? If we got 6-8 minute rest, we do it. It's called active rest. So I know that one in and out, which is walk the curve, jog the straightaway, walk the curve, and jog the straightaway, takes approximately 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you move the lactate like that and it's being actively moved, then you're actually creating a better fitness level for the athlete because the lactate is not pooling in the muscle. You know, so that's why you see that makes sense to you. So that's why I say if you understand the Krebs cycle, then you understand that moving and creating active rest periods. I remember when I was at A&T way back, you know, we would sprint and run, and then we'll be doing, you know, while they were resting, we had sit-ups, chinnies, and push-ups on the rest period. And then we got up and then we did an in and out, came back and ran the rep. You know, so could I just learned that passive rest wasn't good for the body.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people that get on the ground and put their feet up. Well, that's that's something that's old and out and over and inundated. That's nothing that I believe in. You know, so I don't allow athletes to lay on the ground and put their feet up. I'd rather for you to do an in and out and move the lactate and turn it back into an energy source for you.
There you go.
Oh, man. So before we let you go, I know there's going to be some great performances this weekend. Is there anything? I know there's a lot that you could look forward to, but anything you'd like to share in regards to this weekend? What you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah. There's some great. There's gonna be some great performances. The Maxwell twins and what they are setting the benchmark at a higher level. It started with Dana Wilson that we had in the program last year. Then the Maxwells came in, and so there's gonna be somebody else next year. But I think the most important thing to me is just seeing the coaches and the athletes perform at a high level and just enjoying themselves. You know, there's 2 great meets going on this weekend. You know, New Balance is going on in Boston, and we have our meet. You know, and our meet is a great meet. You know, it's built off of certain principles of individualism. And then we don't have a lot of great relay stuff that happens at our Nike meet sometimes. And, and that's sometimes by design. You know, we want to do things a little bit differently. And so I'm not trying to say anything about nobody's meet, but our focus is just a little different. Yeah. And so we're gonna have some good performances, just like New Balance will. And there are great people up there. And but I think, for me personally, the reason why I don't get caught up in all this other stuff, because both of these meets on this weekend coming up, guess what they do? They're taking 10,000, 8,000 kids off the streets, out of their neighborhood, and they're enjoying themselves. They're not getting in trouble. Their lives not being threatened by where they live at. So I look at things a little bit differently on this weekend. I look at this as a collective weekend where we're taking our youth, giving them all opportunities, whether you're in New York or whether you're in Boston. But the number one thing that I take out of this meet is that we got 10,000 kids off the streets, chasing something, other than crying.
Hey, I gotta say, you told one untruth. There's three meets going on this week in this big. Rooting for that national champions here, potential national champions, but the collegiate meets going on this weekend as well. For the collegiate.
That is true. But the kids from the Nike and the New Balance meet got to graduate to that meet. And that meet right there is probably the toughest one to make in the world because it only takes 16 people.
That's right.
So, but I look at this weekend, like I said, a little bit differently than last. I just look at it as an opportunity of our youth, no matter the color, black, white, purple, or green. These kids are off the street. They're having a good time. They're enjoying each other. the competition gets intense, but ultimately at the end of the day, all these kids are safe.
Right.
They're having a good time. They're enjoying these bags that they get and all that good stuff, and all that. So like I said, for me, as a person that's a part of this weekend, I look at it as a weekend of just opportunity for the kids to stay safe, enjoy themselves, prepare for another opportunity in another 4 months to be in Philadelphia or in Oregon. And again, those kids are off the street that weekend. Their lives are protected, and they're becoming better human beings.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go ahead and put this out in the uniform reverse before we close this out. But whether it's next year or this summer or stuff like that, I would love for us to be able to come out and get the kids and let them get on camera or get on the podcast, ask questions and stuff, and just kind of be part of the Nike event. So I'm just
sure. Absolutely. I'm all for that. I think it's all for evolving the sport in its purity, and it allows the kids to say what they need to say. So I'm definitely all for it, and I do thank you guys for the opportunity to be before you, and I'm blessed tremendously to be here this evening. Like I said, tomorrow I have another milestone with my birthday. Been around a little bit, but I'm standing above ground, and I'm able to give back and build on my legacy, to give back to my community. And I just hope that at the end of my day, when my time I'm called home, that people can say, "Hey, you know what? Man, I always liked that man, but he gave back to the heart, though."
That's big.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, Coach Daniels. And we also just thank you for the time again, joining us today and just sharing your insight to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you guys again for having me. And anytime I need to come back, if this podcast creates an opportunity where there's some buzz and there's a lot of questions need to be answered, then I'll be more than happy to come back and answer those questions.
No problem.
We love that. Yeah. Thank you for joining us Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Blocks.
Well, thank you, my fellas. I appreciate you. Love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
Get some rest, Coach. Get some rest.
Yes.
I will. I will next week.
Next week.
Yeah, I got a 6 a.m. flight to catch tomorrow morning. But no, again, when you are doing something that you love, and you understand that you're making a differences in people's lives, this isn't really work for me. This isn't work for you guys doing this podcast.
We love
this is something that we love to do as men, to give back to our sport. So I'm privileged to be before you, and I'm humbled by it. And like I said, we're going to have a good time this weekend. There'll be some great times at our meet and everything. But anytime I need to revisit and come back and answer questions, I'll be here for you.
We'd love to have you.
We love that.